Clinging precariously to a mountain once covered in luscious rainforest, Nambija is a town of about 10,000 at the heart of the fastest growing mining community in southern Ecuador. The rhythm of the grinding plants never stops in Nambija. Their relentless noise is the backbeat to life in an area where everyone has the same goal. Like their Inca ancestors and the waves of Europeans who colonized them later, people here are digging for gold. It was rediscovered in the early 80s at the site of long-abandoned Inca workings. One of the world's richest deposits, it sparked a wild rush, still unregulated.
That explosion was 30 meters above where my men were working. So it shows you how unpredictable blasting procedure is here.
Beyond the mist of the rainforest, the Andes mountain range stretches northwards to Colombia, southwards to Peru. But on what may be the site of the legendary city of El Dorado, foreign companies have arrived, hungry for a share of Ecuador's riches.
It's an extremely good gold prospect, but we are in the process of evaluating whether it's good enough for us. It may not be, it may be, I can't say that at this stage.
Most local miners are considered illegal by the government, which provides no services of any kind in Nambija. Having blasted their way into the hillside on which they live, the men work long hours in a warren of unsupported tunnels which could collapse at any time. The suffocating smell of dynamite or the hollow thud of a distant explosion may remind them of the dangers they face. Yet they continue to scuttle back and forth with their heavy load regardless. They seem to consider mining as their prerogative, and they've little respect for the foreign prospectors the governments entice to Ecuador with large financial concessions.
Here in Ecuador, we're in the process of development. And we won't allow anyone to mistreat us. If foreigners come with good intentions, they'll be welcome. But if they want to be like kings, they won't get away with it. Because we're the kings of this land. We inherited it from our ancestors.
Foreigners, they say, have always exploited the natives. Meanwhile, several multinationals seem to have given up their search for gold or have yet to confirm a major find. Most people are poor in this small developing country of just over 10 million. Though a large producer of coffee and cocoa, Ecuador used to rely mainly on its exports of bananas until oil was discovered in the 70s. But low prices for crude oil and a huge budget deficit recently prompted the government to look elsewhere for revenue. Paradoxically, the foreigners could help redress a disastrous situation. With modern technology, the multinationals could bring environmentally friendly mining, if that's not a contradiction in terms. Whereas local individuals have little choice but to use the cheapest methods with lethal effect on the environment and on people's lives. Here, workers are reopening a road destroyed by an earth slip. Landslides are frequent in Nambija. They're often a direct result of the indiscriminate blasting procedures. In May last year, a mountainside suddenly gave way and buried a gold mining village in the region. 200 houses were swept away as residents were having lunch to celebrate Mother's Day in the mainly Christian community. Up to 300 people were killed. Not all the bodies could be recovered. But life must go on. Once the gold-bearing ore is out of the ground, it's carried all the way to the grinders, often on the backs of children, and then smashed into a finer material. It's then washed out over carpets on which it collects. The carpets are regularly rinsed into vats from which particles of the precious ore will be painstakingly retrieved. The process is slow and inefficient. Only about half the total amount of gold, perhaps, can be extracted in this way. And this is where the problems really start. To isolate the gold, mercury is added and the two coalesce. But mercury is absorbed through the skin. Regular use leads to mental and physical debility in later life. An hour later, the reaction's complete. The amalgam of gold and mercury can be retrieved. It's now time for the final process. Modern methods use cyanide, harmful in the short term, whereas mercury's a time bomb. As it's burnt away from the gold, it emits toxic fumes. This happens all day and every day here.
I think it's very good that the Swiss
Environmentalists describe Nambija as a potential disaster area in the making. The situation can be and must be redressed, they say, by the culprits themselves.
Britain, Netherlands and Germany have between them provided an astonishing 60% of all the mercury that's imported into South America, much of which goes into the small-scale mining that we're talking about. I think it's high time that those governments should recognize the moral responsibility they have to improving the conditions of the people at the receiving end.
The greatest environmental problem in the region is water pollution. Mercury's been seeping into Nambija's open sewers for years, and from there into the streams and rivers which go on to feed the Amazon and its rainforest. Of course, there's no easy answer. A ban would deprive 100,000 small-scale miners in Ecuador of their livelihood. Instead, the solution is perhaps to regulate their activities and monitor those of the large companies which can afford to respect the environment, before it's all too late.
So long as both the small-scale mining and the so far uncontrolled exploration of the bigger companies goes on in that region, it's possible to see that in 5 or 10 years' time there will be essentially no marine life left in the rivers. The riverbanks will be denuded. Sources of foodstuff and traditional agriculture will be denied to the local people. That's the worst-case scenario, but it's on the cards.
Indeed, better farming methods may be the key to survival. By investing in agriculture, the government could attract small operators back to traditional lifestyles. Meanwhile, the debate on the long-term impact of local mining continues. In many areas, the damage is just beginning to show. Whether it can be reversed remains to be seen.